Today's episode is brought to you by Media for All, which was set up to help encourage more Black, Asian, and other ethnic talent into media, and to provide a support and mentoring network to ensure talent flourishes in the media industry that we all love. If you're looking for a mentor or would like to mentor young ethnic talent, check them out at mediaforall.org.uk, and it is all 100% free. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders, and this week is no different. I'm on a call with Andreas Hofmann, who is Vice President, Marketing and Product at Hyundai. Andreas, thanks for joining the podcast. For those of the audience who don't know who you are and what you do, could you give them a bit of an overview?
Yes, Tom. Hello from my side as well. I'm in charge of product and marketing at Hyundai Motor Europe, and I think the title already tells mostly what I'm doing. So it's product development. As I have to mention, we are very much concentrated and focused on the European markets, around 40 markets to cover. And on the product side, it's product development. So we have our own engineers here in Europe. We have our own design studio. And we are trying to catch the taste of the European customer and turn this into European, very, very European products. So it's not one size fits all. This is the product part, and we are very much in competition to what Hyundai Korea, Hyundai US, and Hyundai China wants to have. So we always have to compete against them and find the best car then for the world. And the other side is the marketing part. So these products we decide 2-3 years before are coming back. They have to be launched, they have to be introduced, and they have to be sold. So it's not ending with the product development. Cars are coming back, and then we have to treat them over the whole life cycle to have them even fresh the whole time and as attractive as possible. Pricing, for example, to find the right price, the right volume, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, to attract people. So this is the main two pillars I have to take care about. I'm almost 32 years now in the car industry. I started very early in the late 90s at BMW, and then they have different stations as well as Honda, Japanese car manufacturer, and the main premium European or German car manufacturers like Audi, BMW, and Mercedes. And finally, I came to Hyundai almost 3.5 years ago because I believe after all this premium, which is quite similar premium segments, I'd like to jump into the mainstream segment, which has a lot of interesting aspects I wanted to explore. That's it in a nutshell about what I've done in the past.
So I'm curious to know, in order to have such a varied and successful career, are you one of these marketers who does things by feel, or do you rely on other people's knowledge? Are you a reader? Do you like marketing books? And if you do, is there a certain book that you always go back to, or you buy for other people, or you recommend?
So it's 50-50, of course. Gut feeling plays an enormous role within my current, but as well in the positions I had before. But of course, I read a lot. I analyze a lot, not too much, because too much analysis sometimes is not helpful. And referring to books, it's not a new one. It almost, I think it came out beginning of the 2000s. It's from David Brooks, and it's called The Bobos. And it interested me very much because he talked at this time about a new target group. he called them bobos, coming from this Bohemian culture. So on the one side, they have been Bohemians, on the other side, they have been yuppies. And this combination fascinated me a lot because, as I mentioned before, we have to be very clear about our target groups and how to attract them. And of course, there are the Sigma milieus, everybody, I believe, knows, very traditional, but very much true today as well. But of course, we have to look into certain customer groups which might come up, which might be interesting for us. And to be honest, we changed our customers during our life cycle quite tremendously. We have been very much perceived as value for money brand. So you can imagine that you, in the former times, catch a completely different target group than today when we are talking about electric cars with more modern, more future-oriented people. And this book from David Brooks reminds me a lot with a new target group just coming up, which are called sustainable socials. And these are very, very interesting for us. And I can see a lot of quite same behavior like he described in his book 20 years ago. And that attracts me very much. And I learned a lot from this book, which is still valid in a quite slightly different way. But if we really want to know about target groups and how they behave, how our products might suit to them, then you have to really dive deep into them. And these social sustainables or sustainable socials, however we call them, are very creative, are very much interested in cultural and social engagement. They are wealthy in a certain way, but still they are rebellious on the other side. So I believe we have to find good products to suit them, but it's an interesting target group, and that's why I reflect to this original book of David Brooks, which was called, as I said, The Bobos.
So outside of books, maybe, what else, or what is the one thing that you've spent your own money on that you couldn't do without, that you use for work?
Yeah, I'm a car maniac, to be honest. If it's good or not, I don't know, but I love cars, and I believe you need to love cars, or you have to love cars, otherwise you can't do the job properly. So I invested a lot of money during my time in cars, not so much in old timers or traditional old cars. But in cars, just for me, as a pleasure and fun to drive, and on a daily use, I think a good investment was my pen. I'm very much a visual guy, so I like to write things down, to look at them, to scribble something, which to transform scribbles into PowerPoints. I always start with a scribble and then talk with my colleagues here, my guys, about possible direction. I like the whiteboard to paint things. So this physical, small little Mont Blanc in this case really guides me through my whole career. And I think this was a very good investment.
So what tools are you using in this lockdown world, whereas you might used to sort of jot something down on pen and paper and push that across the desk or use a whiteboard? How have you got round that lack of like physical interaction and sharing ideas with your team? Are you using sort of virtual whiteboards, or is there something that you've discovered that you find is an interesting complement to that Mont Blanc?
Yeah, we used virtual whiteboards. That's true, but to be honest, very easy again. The things I scribbled, and as well from some of my colleagues, because we believe it's the best way to do it. We just make a photo and send it to each other, and work further on it. It really sounds very ancient, But at the end of the day, to be honest, it works. It works quite properly, and it's fast. It's even faster than even if you're an expert in PowerPoint or digital assets. It works pretty well, at least for me. Let's say it like this. But I can see that some of my colleagues have picked up the idea, and of course, it's more it intensified during COVID times. And I believe if we come back to more normal or times we remember and wanted to have back, I think these things will stick, and we will continue to work like this.
So before we move on to your shiny new object, I'd love to know what your all-time favorite top marketing tip is. What is that silver bullet that someone told you back in the 90s, or something that you've heard in the last few weeks, months, or years that you live by as your best bit of marketing advice that you've received?
Yeah, I once worked. This have been my Mercedes times with Smart, and I worked very closely with the founder of this watch, Mr. Hayek. And at this time, he told me, you have to be fast. You have to be the first one. You have to, and this is already a USP. So I thought about a lot about this. And if you're looking now today, how we in the car industry have to transfer and transform into many, many new topics, this is still valid. We have to be fast, and we have to have this certain object, which everybody might not have in his mind, but wants to have it. And with this, as I mentioned before, we have then to stick and go our way. Don't think too much about left and right and about, but this could not fit into this or into that. We just go your way. If you are convinced about your idea, just follow it, and don't let yourself interfere from other opinions. Of course, you should hear them and you should digest them. But I believe that if you are convinced about your next idea, your golden nugget, don't be stopped by anybody. Just go your way. And if you remember, I remember these first times when we drove electric cars in the mid of the 90s. In Switzerland, nobody believed in it, but at the end of the day, now, 20 years later, it's the new normal, but somebody stick to the idea, and it became famous now.
So I love that advice. If you have faith and belief in your idea, stick to it and keep going. But as you also said, it's not that you don't listen to other people, but there's has to be the point where you do change your mind, where you do change course? Or is it better to be wrong and convinced and deliberate and consistent? Or is it better to be slightly dubious that you may not have it right in the first place? How do you strike that balance? Or do you not have the luxury of striking the balance and you have to commit?
I don't have so much the luxury to do so. But we have some products, let's say it like this, where we can act a little bit more with freedom. And I believe these are, if you're looking into Hyundai, these are elements which are not very much related to classical cars. You might know that we want to become the leader in future mobility. And of course, to become leader in future mobility, you should not stick to classical cars, even if they are electrified or driving via hydrogen. But to become leader in future mobility, you have to explore other fields. And this is a lot of trial and error. But for example, if you think about flying taxis or urban air mobility, or maybe a walking car. So we twice did show concepts, and we are very much in robotics, which one was Elevate 2 years ago, and then the last one just recently has been shown, which is the Tiger. The name comes from Transforming Intelligent Ground Excursion Roboter. So you see, these are fields where we have to develop ourselves and where we can go where we can, where we have to go our direction. Even so, maybe people might think, my goodness, they should stick to their cars, but please don't experiment with walking cars or flying taxis. Yeah. So this is what this company really offers to us, to explore in these new fields and just go for it.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we're at the halfway stage now. So we're going to talk about your shiny new object, which is the balance between physical and digital. Can you talk to the audience about what you mean by that?
Yeah, this is, I think, a very important topic, not only in the car industry, I think in general, but maybe especially in the car industry. Digitalization is the key word, and everybody is running now behind to digitalize by 100% everything. But we found out that, first of all, we are very much depending, of course, on our physical network. So we have in Europe around 1,600 dealers distributing our cars, and they are closed right now. And then, of course, the question was how to further sell cars very, very easily. And of course, we switched everything into online sales, for example. And we found out the success is not as big as we have thought, because everybody talks about digitalization. Now we offer click to buy, for example. You can buy your car online. Even you can get evaluation of your current car, finance program, and so on and so forth. But people are more rejective than we thought, because maybe in comparison or maybe different to other more consumer-related goods, the car is still, first of all, quite expensive product to buy. So you have to think about it deeply. And secondly, of course, you have to get experience with the product. So that means, in this case, you have to have a physical experience. You need to enter the car. You need to, with all the senses, to experience the car. The interior. How does it look? How does it feel? How does the steering wheel feel? How does the car drive? How does the car drive on the autobahn, on the motorway, on quite tight curves? And this is not easy to transform into a digital world. So we are struggling a little bit, and we are looking for ways how to combine, or how to have the best combination of digital experience on the one side, which is very much important in the first touch with the company. But then in the later stage, if you go through the sales funnel, if it becomes more serious to buy a car, people need to drive it. And then the physical dealership comes into place, even if it's, as I said before, quite difficult at these times. So to really balance it out, how much digital information do we have to provide on the one side, and how can we guarantee that people really have a life experience with their hopefully next car? We haven't found the golden final nugget in this context, but it's very challenging, I can tell you. And we thought it would be easier to have everything now digitalized, but customers are not as keen on in regards of buying a car.
So that reminds me of a presentation that I saw. I think it must be at least 10 years ago, a very long time ago, one way or another. And I can't even remember who was presenting. But the stat that they gave was that every day 4 Ferraris or something were sold on eBay. So even if that's a quarter true, that's 1 Ferrari a day, or if it's one a week, or even if it's one a month, people still bought a car that they'd probably never been in, or certainly not the actual specific car itself, sort of 10 years ago. So what is it that you think that digital can't replace? Now I understand that you talked about the feel of the car, the fabrics, the metal and so on, but there's been huge examples of very expensive things being bought online, whether that's other luxury goods, whether that's a handbag or whatever, or a holiday is very expensive, but you can't try out the holiday before you buy it. That's a sort of bit of a leap of faith. So what is it about automotive that people don't want to convert online? Is it do you think just historical programming in our brains that if you buy a car you go to a showroom, or is there something intrinsic in cars itself that digital could never replace?
I believe both. You're totally right, and I remember your example with the Ferraris. First of all, we have to say in the luxury segment, I think it's easier, because in the segment you just mentioned, Ferrari super sports cars and so on, the experts know what they get. Let's say it like this. And especially for auctions, for example, where these cars are handled, it's quite obvious if you see an old Ferrari or even a new one, what you get, because these are really experts and there's not so much competition. We are in a, first of all, quite different price range, to be honest. Yeah. So we are starting around 10,000 euro, not about 100,000 or 1 million. This makes a difference. And on the other side, we have a lot of competition. Yeah. So the mainstream, we call it the mainstream segment. So not premium, but mainstream or near premium. We have so many competitors that the classical normal customer, let's call him like this or her, they have so many choices that they want to try it. And especially in this segment we are acting today, the exchange of brands is quite heavy. So they are trying out different things. We always have a high rate of conquest, and not so much of loyalization, which is a problem during the time period. So people are really keen on trying out different things. That's why the physical part plays still an important role. And I believe this is one aspect, and the other one is to drive a car, to buy a car is still a very emotional thing. And if you see how we as a brand have been evolved during the years, so from the value for money brand, so to a more mobility solution provider. And if you look then into what is our number one reason to buy a car, it's design. It's not anymore, of course, in a later stage, it's value for money as well, and good quality, good service, safety, of course. But the number one thing to purchase a car, at least with us, is in the meantime design. And design, at the end of the day, is 100% emotional decision. So, and for this, you need to see a car from every angle. Even if you can transport what we did via 3D animation in the car configurator, you can see the cars from top and down and then in all the angles. But at least you have to see it live. And our designers, if you are talking about product development, of course, we always judge different types of cars, different stages of cars in comparison to our competition. And we do it now online, but it has not the same effect like you stand in a room, have the car physically in front of you, can walk around, can experience, can sit in, and so on. It cannot be reflected, at least at this stage, via online or via digital asset.
So What digital technologies have you seen that have emerged kind of in a hurry in the last year or so to try and combat that problem? And obviously configurators and 3D renders are, a commonplace really in the industry before the pandemic happened. But have you seen anything new where obviously it hasn't replaced the experience of being next to a car, experiencing the design firsthand? But have you seen anything that you think has been a productive step in the right direction?
I believe before pandemic, and pandemic maybe only has accelerated the topic. Augmented reality and virtual reality has already been here. It has been accelerated very much, or seeing objects via goggles. So we experienced this as well when we showed new products to journalists, and they got the experience and they liked it very much. So the technology, I believe, is already there, but it's not as convenient as maybe people want to have it. So you still need to wear something, or you still have to go to a certain room to experience, and the quality might not be as good as a one-to-one physical object, but we are heading there. So I believe technology is there. It's not a matter of technology. It's a matter of accessibility and of costs as well, because all these things I have seen until now are very expensive and can't be transformed, for example, quickly to a dealership, because we have as well the problem that we have such a wide range of cars in our portfolio that a classical dealer, normal dealer, or even a smaller dealership can't show all the full lineup anymore. So we have to switch into ways how customers can experience another color, another interior, another fabric of the seat, and so on. So we are of course working into this direction, but the costs to have it implemented are still very, very high. But I believe it's just a matter of time. Like if you remember how mobiles 10 or 15 years ago looked like a brick, and now you even can't detect them anymore. So I believe we will have a same direction in regards of development on these assets as well.
I wonder when the virtual reality moves into the mainstream, when someone finds a mass market use for it, that it may become a more viable sales channel, and as you say, less expensive. Everyone's got a computer that can run, like pull in some kind of 5G experience, and maybe it will change then. But that's really interesting to hear that. So just before we wrap up, if there's someone listening to this who isn't struggling in the same way to balance physical and digital in the way that the automotive industry is, and I don't know, maybe someone in the yacht industry, or someone who has that similar problem, that their stores are closed and that what they still need to do is educate, inspire, and sell products. What advice do you have for other industries who are also struggling within the pandemic with balancing the relationship between physical and digital?
Yeah, I believe that digital will not, even if we look into the future, digital will not 100% kill the physical experience. I believe it will be a mix. We have had the tendency that everything becomes digital, and we see now from market research, if you believe in market research or not, but people are maybe even sometimes fed up with digital experience. So I believe we should stick to provide physical experience in the future, and the combination is very much depending on in which mood, first of all, the prospects or the customers are, how much they are already informed. I think the upper part of a sales funnel could easily, and which is today already valid, could easily covered by 100% digital. But really, when it comes to especially to emotional products, could be a shirt as well. Of course, you can buy a shirt online, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't suit you, you will send it back. So I believe that still we have to find, and I don't have the golden nugget yet, possibilities how people can experience, have a physical experience and get the kick to buy a certain project which is not 100% digital available.
I'm so sorry. We've got to leave it there. We're done for time. But what a journey, Andreas. Thanks so much for your time. If someone wanted to get in touch with you about the things you've talked about, how would you like them to do that?
It's anytime possible. I don't know if you can distribute my email address. You can directly approach me. This is no problem. So I believe that there might be possibility through you to distribute my email address. Any time welcomed.
Fantastic. I will extend that to anyone who wants to get in touch. And I'll be the middleman. No one's asked me to do that before. Brilliant. Look, thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Hi. Just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.